Yo, what's going on, world? It's your guy Horace checking in back with you, or checking back in with you. Um, Diving in to talk about gold today. Really gonna review the macro perspective very briefly, but also to talk about in more real time what I'm expecting gold to do over the next quarter, I believe. So, looking at the macro, the most macro view of gold from an Elliott wave standpoint, it's pretty clear to me that gold is not in an impulsive waveform. Um, what I see when I look at this chart is pretty much this all goes sideways, and this is the beginning. So there's actually nothing really happening here, right? So the first up move here, we'll consider this a sideways correction, another up wave here. So I look at this to be a zigzag wave, right? We then get this sideways sort of move down. I consider this to be a sort of mid wave, which looks very much like a zigzag wave as well. So starting from this point, we look and see what else do we have coming up here for the upside wave from a macro perspective. I see another roughly another three-wave move, right? So from here, I know what my perspective is for gold from a macro look. And from there, I just dive in to see where we are and, like I said, in near real time and how that ties into and aligns with the overall um, expectations for gold. So one thing I want to point out here as well is you see this sort of trend line going to the zenith, not to the zenith, but to the genesis, the beginning of this actual chart. You can see in the sort of middle here, it also has this chart, this waveform again, this fractal again. And then lastly here, more recently, it hit this fractal again. And this is roughly the only the third time that this trend line has been hit. You could argue and say there are multiple hits here. I would probably agree with you. But generally, as for time frames and time zones and periods, this is the third period when this trend line has been hit. And this trend line itself is not why I am bearish on gold, but more so because of the structure that I laid out here, this fractal that we're looking at from the most macro perspective that gold has to offer. And not going to dive into these waves here, but it looks like the final fifth wave based on my wave count for gold. And just based on this sort of trend line here that's in orange, this sort of dash trend line here, you can see where the action has been sort of playing along this trend line very closely here. And there's never really been a retest of this line at all since it broke away January 2024. So keep in mind, I'm not saying that this drop is going to happen because this trend line is here. I'm not saying that top is in because this trend line is here either, but there are other sort of analysis that I've done on this chart over time, over maybe a couple of years now to really calibrate this and hone it in. And time will tell if I'm really on par with what I'm thinking will happen now, or if I'm still in need of further calibration and patience on things as they develop. But um, from what I see from what I've seen over the past few months, I'm pretty confident that gold has reached a very macro and pivotal turning point. Pivotal. I'm not. Did I say? I'm not sure if pivotal is a word. Um, but I'm pretty sure that gold has reached a very macro and pivotal turning point here. I thought that it would push up to 4,600. That's what I've said more recently, maybe as recently as a month ago. But I think the recent push up to 4,500, it was really like 4,000 for $945 or something. But that recent push, I think, will do what I thought gold was going to do at 4,600. So pretty much based on this trend line here, based on this macro trend line here, but more importantly, based on the wave count, I think that gold is going to be due for a pretty important, a pretty big drop here over the next quarter. And, looking at this trend line here as well, you can see it kind of points to maybe an even lower level, somewhere here around, let's see what that is. And I like to use pink to sort of signify, the sweet spot or whatnot. But I think gold will reach back down to about 3,300 or 2,900. And I think that'll be like Q between Q1 and Q2 of 2026. Timing is not really my strongest suit, trying to guess date and times or whatnot. And I will remind you of that on every occasion that I can. But I'm pretty confident that gold is going to be making a pretty sharp drop over the next few months to retest this range of 3,300 or at worst case 2,900. But support looks pretty decent from here, so I would guess that the 3,300 would give some support to at least kick off a rally or retest higher levels or something to that tune. Um, but yeah, if you're playing gold, please be careful. Please stay safe. I think it's at a very macro top. Like I mentioned on Twitter recently, I think that gold or the value of gold will be transitioning to crypto, perhaps Bitcoin. I think governments around the globe are going to melt away their gold or do away with their hard metal and move towards crypto over the next, I don't know, few decades. I don't know. Haven't really looked into it that far ahead, or I don't have enough signals to really have enough confidence in my analysis that far ahead. But as for what's coming next quarter, by the end of Q1 2026, I'm pretty damn confident that we're going to see gold at 3,300, or at worst case, around 2,900. So if you're in this arena, if you're touching gold, you're playing gold, if you're exposed to it, like I said, stay safe, don't drown. It's your guy Horace, ElliotWaveScience.com if you want more real-time updates on gold. But until next time, like I said, stay safe, don't drown. It's your guy Horace. We'll do it again soon. Peace.